Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
In the 1980s, I was the sole full-time supercomputer programmer of the first and the only ensemble of 65,536 commodity processors that I called a primordial internet. I visualized my new internet as my global network of 65,536 processors that were identical to each other and that were equal distances afar and apart from each other. That internet that I visualized in a 16-dimensional hyperspace became my Rosetta stone. I deciphered that Rosetta stone at 10:15 a.m. New York time, Tuesday, the 4th of July of 1989. That experimental discovery of how and why massively parallel computing works made the news headlines and added a new zest, or a faster speed and a higher speedup, to the quest for the modern massively parallel processing supercomputer. That experimental discovery opened the door to the vast and dynamic field of research called massively parallel processing supercomputing. That modern supercomputer is now powered by more than 10 million commodity off-the-shelf processors that cooperatively solves the most computation-intensive mathematical problems arising in extreme-scale computational physics. I stopped the full-time programming of the most massively parallel processing supercomputers in 1989. I stopped supercomputing and doing so in parallel in 1989. I stopped because I had reached the theoretical maximum speed increase that could be experimentally discovered and recorded across an ensemble of processors that were the building blocks of a new supercomputer. My invention of a new parallel processing supercomputer wasn't finished by 1986. But by 1989, my parallel processing supercomputing was too finished. I wasn't getting any supercomputer speedup increases after the maximum speedup that I experimentally discovered on the 4th of July of 1989. And I realized that I have overprogrammed the internet that I visualized as my global network of 65,536 commodity processors. I visualized my ensemble of processors as supercomputing together to emulate one seamless, cohesive internet that is not a new computer per se, but that is a new supercomputer de facto. As a research supercomputer scientist, my focus was on answering the big, unanswerable questions of the 1970s and 80s, and in particular, to answer the grand challenge question of massively parallel processing supercomputing. That grand challenge question was, quote, how do we change the way we look at the supercomputer of tomorrow, unquote. The June 20, 1990 issue of the Wall Street Journal reported that my experimental discovery of the massively parallel processing supercomputer will change the way we look at the supercomputer. In the old way, we thought about a conventional supercomputer as powered by one strong ox. That strong ox was a metaphor for one powerful processor. In the new way, we think about a modern supercomputer as powered by 65,536 chickens. Those chickens were my metaphors for 65,536 processors. In that Wall Street Journal article, it was noted that I experimentally discovered that 65,536 commodity off-the-shelf processors that worked together as one cohesive computing team computed several orders of magnitude faster than one supercomputer that was powered by only one fast vector processor. In the 1980s, I was the strongest proponent for the chickens or for the modern massively parallel processing supercomputer. Seymour Cray, who made his name in the 1980s as the strongest proponent for conventional vector processing supercomputers, was the strongest opponent of the modern massively parallel processing supercomputer. The lesson that I learned from my quest for the fastest massively parallel processing supercomputer was this: the success of a scientific discovery is not dependent on, quote unquote, not guilty verdict from every notable scientist. The science fiction writings of creative writers are different from the factual writings of research scientists. As a research supercomputer scientist, I could not create the fastest computation and create it in the manner a creative writer creates her science fiction novel. I discovered, not created, the fastest computation. I experimentally discovered the fastest computation across my new internet. My new internet was my new computer as well as my new supercomputer. My new internet was a global network of 65,536 commodity off-the-shelf processors. It said that a science fiction novelist is born to tell tales. I said that the scientific discoverer is born to tell truths. Any scientific discovery must be reproducible in a laboratory. My experimental discovery was reproduced by polymaths at home with physics, calculus, and parallel processing supercomputing. My experimental discovery was and can be reproduced because it represented the truth. It's been said that art is what we can get away with. I say that not discovering is what we can't get away with. For 16 years onward of June 20, 1974, my technological vision followed 16 mutually orthogonal dimensions in hyperspace. I followed 16 directions. That vision led me across 16 times 2 to the power 16, or 1,048,576 commodity off-the-shelf processors. Each processor communicated via email in 16 directions and communicated to send and receive initial and boundary conditions for my 65,536 initial boundary value problems, and to share those intermediate answers with its 16 nearest neighboring processors. It's by indirection that we discover new directions for scientific progress. In the 1970s and 80s, it was anticipated that Moore's law will come to an end. That means that the anticipated speed increases of processors and computers will not continue to double every 2 years as predicted by Moore's law. With the anticipated end of Moore's law, I anticipated that doubling the number of computer cores will be the only way to double the speed up of the modern parallel processing supercomputer. In the mid-1970s, supercomputer pioneers such as Seymour Cray and Gene Amdahl ridiculed and mocked my parallel processing theory. I theorized that I could use the new internet that I visualized as a global network of 65,536 commodity processors, and that I could use that new internet to solve computation-intensive grand challenge problems. The poster boy of the 20 grand challenge problems of supercomputing was the global circulation model that was used to foresee otherwise unforeseeable global warming. In the 1980s, no automation tools existed for automatic message passing across processors or computers. For that reason, I had to explicitly email each processor that I harnessed to experimentally discover the fastest computation. The supercomputer textbooks of the 1970s and 80s wrote that harnessing the massively parallel processing supercomputer to solve one of the 20 grand challenge problems of supercomputing is impossible. Before my experimental discovery that occurred on the 4th of July of 1989, it was impossible to synchronously email 65,536 commodity processors and command their emails them to compute together as one seamless, cohesive supercomputer that is not a new computer per se, but that is a new internet de facto, and that solved a grand challenge problem in extreme scale computational physics. Since it was believed to be impossible to parallel process, manufacturers of vector processing supercomputers dismissed my parallel processing theory as a huge waste of everybody's time. I theorized that I could use massively parallel processing I theorized that I could massively parallel process by programming a global network of 65,536 processors. I theorized that I could use those commodity processors to communicate and execute extreme scale petroleum reservoir simulators and to compute and communicate them faster and do so by a factor of 65,536 increases in the speeds of both email communication and arithmetical computations. It made the news headlines when I experimentally confirmed my theory and confirmed massively parallel processing on the 4th of July of 1989. That experimental discovery of the massively parallel processing supercomputer now helps petroleum geologists to discover and recover otherwise undiscoverable and unrecoverable oil and gas. That's one of the practical technologies, as well as the rich and fertile consequences that came out of my invention of massively parallel processing. That experimental discovery of massively parallel processing is the reason 1 in 10 supercomputers are purchased by the petroleum industry.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.